Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Life Up Podcast. Let's start your day with positive thoughts and talks.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're taking a deep dive today into the happiness hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. It looks like you're really interested in getting to the bottom of what makes us human, how we grow, how we change, and maybe even what happiness really means. So today we're going to try to pull out the juiciest ideas from the book, like where ancient wisdom meets modern psychology and gives us something to really think about. We're going to be looking at the way our minds are structured, where happiness might actually come from, and how challenges and even virtue might play a part.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Haidt's approach is it's not just about the latest studies. He actually looks back at philosophy and literature from the past 500 years and compares that to what modern psychology is finding. It's like a conversation across time. He's after those big, great ideas about being human. He looks at them through a modern lens, and the book is structured around different parts of the human experience. Like starting with that inner conflict we all feel and going out to the big questions about meaning and even the sacred.
Exactly. And for you, since you like getting to the point, but also really understanding the ideas, we're going to focus on the stuff that really makes an impact and sticks with you. We'll give you the summaries, but we'll also throw in specific examples that really make you go, aha, all while keeping it clear and easy to follow. So let's dive right in. Haidt talks about the divided self, and he uses this metaphor of a rider on an elephant. The rider is our conscious mind, the part that plans and tries to be in control. And the elephant, well, that's our automatic emotional side, which is strong and instinctive. It often determines where we actually end up going. So this rider-elephant thing keeps popping up and affects everything from our willpower to how we experience happiness.
What I find fascinating is how Haidt breaks down the divided self even further. He shows us it's not just one simple split. He's got 4 ways our minds seem to be working against themselves. First, you've got the classic mind-body tension. Montaigne said that each part of our body has its own desires and intentions, and anyone who's tried to ignore a craving knows exactly what he meant.
Oh yeah, totally.
Then there's the left brain versus right brain, something that Gazaniga's split brain research really brought to light. Turns out the 2 hemispheres process things differently, and this can lead to conflicting actions. Remember those experiments where people would verbally deny seeing something, but their left hand would point right at it? It's like 2 minds in one head.
It's mind-blowing.
It is.
And then Haidt talks about the new brain versus the old brain. It's like we have this ancient limbic system that deals with basic urges like hunger and fear, and then this newer frontal cortex that's supposed to be in charge of planning and impulse control. It's the constant battle between wanting something now and our long-term goals.
Right.
There was even that case where a teacher started acting really strangely because of a tumor pressing on his frontal lobe. When they took it out, he went back to normal, but when it grew back, the behavior returned.
Wow.
Shows you how important that frontal cortex is, like it's the brake in our brain.
And the 4th division, which is the closest to the rider and elephant idea, is the difference between controlled and automatic processing. It's like those priming studies. Our emotions and subconscious can be influenced by things we don't even realize. Like if you see positive words for a split second, you might rate neutral things more favorably later on.
Oh, wow.
Or think about the marshmallow experiment with kids. That agonizing choice between 1 marshmallow now or 2 later.
Yeah.
That shows the struggle between wanting an immediate reward and our ability to delay gratification. The point Haidt makes is that the rider, our conscious will, doesn't have that much direct control. It often just explains decisions the elephant, our emotions, and automatic responses has already made. Hume said it best. Reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions.
So it sounds like our inner world is a bit of a chaotic committee. But the good news is, Haidt talks about changing your mind, which means it's not all about being at the mercy of this wild elephant. He explores how we can actually influence it. He starts with Boethius, who even when he was facing imprisonment and death, found a way to see his situation differently and find inner peace. It's that idea of cognitive reappraisal. Nothing is miserable unless you think it so.
Powerful stuff. It means our interpretation of events has huge power over us.
Huge.
And Haidt links this ancient wisdom to modern psychology with effective priming. Those experiments where subtle cues can influence our automatic emotional responses, like reacting a tiny bit faster to the word joy after seeing a happy face. It shows that our emotions can be subtly influenced. Then he brings up Beck's cognitive therapy, which is a more direct way to change our minds. The idea is to break the cycle of negative thoughts by identifying them. Beck talked about the cognitive triad of depression: negative views about yourself, the world, and the future. These thought patterns fuel negative emotions, like overgeneralizing or jumping to conclusions.
It's like becoming aware of those automatic negative thoughts and realizing they might not be true.
Exactly.
And then Haidt even talks about SSRIs like Prozac. It's amazing how they can change mood and even personality by affecting brain chemistry, like a shortcut to changing how we feel inside. I remember reading about studies where SSRIs made people more agreeable or less neurotic. Shows how much our biology plays a part in our emotions.
Absolutely. The takeaway here is that influencing our emotions isn't just about willpower. It takes strategies and methods, whether it's cognitive reframing like Boethius, cognitive therapy to challenge negative thoughts, or even medications like Prozac. It's about working with our divided mind, not just fighting against it.
Now let's move on to something that's deep in our nature. Reciprocity with a vengeance. Haidt looks at how the principle of give and take shapes our interactions. He even talks about Cialdini's work on persuasion, like how giving a small gift can make someone feel obligated to give back. It's like those charities that send you free address labels.
Right, or the Hare Krishnas giving out flowers. It makes you want to reciprocate, even if it's just a little bit.
It does.
But reciprocity is more than just a sales trick. Haidt argues it's a basic part of human social life, and it's key for social cohesion. He also talks about the tit-for-tat strategy. You start by cooperating, but then you mirror the other person's behavior, whether it's good or bad. It's surprisingly effective for encouraging cooperation, especially in smaller groups where people know each other.
And then there's the ultimatum game, which really messes with rational economic theory. One person gets some money and proposes how to split it with another person who can accept or reject. If they reject, no one gets anything. Logically, you'd accept any offer that's more than zero, but people often reject offers they see as unfair, even if they get nothing. It shows we have a deep sense of fairness.
Right, fairness trumps pure self-interest.
Yeah, and the brain imaging studies Haidt talks about show activity in the insula, the part of the brain dealing with negative emotions when people get unfair offers. It's really emotional.
Definitely. Gratitude and revenge, as he points out, are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other in a social species. Gratitude encourages cooperation, while revenge prevents exploitation. They're both crucial for ultra-sociality, our ability to form large cooperative societies. He even speculates that gossip might have evolved to track reputations and enforce cooperation, and negative gossip spreads way faster than positive stuff. It's all about maintaining the social fabric.
This leads us to the faults of others. Haidt digs into hypocrisy and how we see flaws in others easier than in ourselves. It's a common experience, seeing someone else's mistakes while ignoring our own similar actions.
It's human nature, isn't it?
It is.
The research Haidt mentions is pretty telling. People judge negative actions much more harshly than they reward positive ones, like a 25-to-1 ratio for heroism versus murder. Bad things stand out more in our minds. He also talks about Baumeister's myth of pure evil. That evil is rarely as simple as we think. It often comes from complex interactions like a cycle of provocation and retaliation. Or it can be driven by ordinary things like greed, hurt ego, or even misguided idealism.
It's sobering to think that even in clear cases of wrongdoing, there's often a deeper story.
There is. And Baumeister's point that feeling threatened can trigger violence, while grand ideals can fuel large-scale atrocities, is something to consider.
Yeah.
What Haidt suggests to combat this judgment is to find fault with ourselves. It's tough, but freeing. When we honestly look at our part in conflicts, our own biases, our anger at others can soften. Even if we think we're right, acknowledging the other person's perspective or our own mistakes can be a step toward understanding and better relationships.
Now let's talk about something everyone thinks about. The pursuit of happiness. Haidt explores different views on where happiness actually comes from. He contrasts the fleeting happiness of getting what we want with the more lasting well-being that ancient wisdom traditions, like Buddhism and Stoicism say, comes from inner peace and letting go of attachments.
Right, he's contrasting those two different ideas.
He does.
And Haidt introduces this cool concept called the progress principle. It's the idea that we get more pleasure from moving towards our goals than from actually achieving them. Like the satisfaction of working on a tough project versus that fleeting feeling when it's done.
Oh, now that feeling.
It explains why that new car smell fades or winning the lottery doesn't equal lasting happiness. It's linked to the hedonic treadmill, our tendency to adapt to changes so they don't affect our happiness long term. Lottery winners and people with disabilities often return to their baseline happiness.
So we adapt quickly, which can be kind of a bummer. But Haidt then gives us this happiness formula. H equals S plus C plus V. Our happiness, H, comes from our set point, S, which is genetics and temperament. Our conditions, like wealth, health, and relationships, and our voluntary activities, V, the things we choose to do. Our set point is pretty stable, and we adapt to changes in conditions. But Haidt says that voluntary activities offer a more sustainable path to happiness because they require constant effort.
Yes, because they keep us involved.
Right.
These could be things like mindfulness, exercise, learning a new skill, pursuing hobbies, or nurturing relationships through kindness. Haidt says that using our strengths in these activities, especially those that strengthen social bonds, is a good path to fulfillment. He also stresses control over our environment and minimizing conflict is crucial for happiness. And there's the paradox of choice, where maximizers, who always want the best option, are often less happy than satisficers, who are okay with good enough.
It's interesting. And now let's talk about something human and vital for well-being: love and attachments. Haidt explores how relationships affect our happiness. Studies consistently show that strong social connections, especially a good marriage, are linked to higher well-being.
It's so fundamental.
It is.
Haidt leans on attachment theory from Bowlby and Ainsworth. The idea is that secure attachment in childhood sets the stage for our relationships later on. He compares romantic love to infant-parent attachment. Seeking closeness, feeling sad when apart, using the loved one as a safe haven, he highlights the role of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, in these bonds.
So those early experiences shape our adult love lives. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Haidt also distinguishes between passionate and companionate love. Passionate love is that intense infatuation at the start, while companionate love is the deeper, more stable bond built on trust and shared experiences. Passionate love is intense but fades, while companionate love endures.
Right, one is fleeting, the other lasts.
And it's cool how Haidt contrasts ancient philosophy on love. Plato and the Stoics were wary of intense attachments because of potential suffering. But in Christian thought, selfless love like caritas and agape is central. He also brings in Durkheim's research on suicide, which shows the importance of social connections for well-being.
Right, we're social creatures.
Exactly. And he touches on the benefits of giving support to others.
Yeah.
Now let's get into something that seems counterintuitive: the uses of adversity. Haidt explores the idea that we can grow from tough or even traumatic experiences. This is post-traumatic growth. He shares the story of Greg, who found positive changes after his wife left him and took their kids.
Whoa.
Haidt sees three main benefits of adversity. First, it reveals hidden strengths we didn't know we had. Second, it deepens relationships and shows us who we can rely on. And third, it shifts our priorities, making us focus on what truly matters.
It forces us to reevaluate.
Yeah, it does. He uses McAdams' 3 levels of personality traits, adaptations, and life story to show how adversity becomes part of our identity. He even talks about contamination, where bad events overshadow good memories, which can link to depression.
It's about how our narrative changes.
It is. And Lerner's research on the belief in a just world helps explain why we struggle with understanding tragedy. We like to believe people get what they deserve.
Yeah, it's a way of making sense of things.
It is. And Pennebaker's work on expressive writing shows it's not just venting, but making sense of the trauma that helps. In The Memory Bump, where we remember ages 15 to 25 so clearly, suggests that adversity during those years really shapes us.
Interesting.
Now, the felicity of virtue. Haidt looks at how virtue is important for a good life, using Ben Franklin's attempt at moral perfection with his virtue chart. Virtues like honesty, compassion, and self-control are valued across cultures.
Timeless values.
They are. Haidt says moral instruction needs to speak to both the rider, our understanding of right and wrong, and the elephant, our emotional responses. He thinks the Western shift towards rational ethics like Kant and Bentham may have led to a decline in teaching character and moral habits emotionally.
It's about engaging our whole selves.
Right. And he mentions Peterson and Seligman's work on classifying character strengths as a modern way to define virtues. And focusing on our strengths, not just fixing weaknesses, can be a more fulfilling path to growth and happiness.
Absolutely.
And research shows that altruism, acting for the good of others, is linked to well-being, especially when it's direct help or connected to our purpose, like volunteering.
It's about giving back.
It is. Haidt also worries about the limits of our modern moral vocabulary and how important shared community standards are, citing Durkheim and Hunter. Now, divinity with or without God. Haidt explores our sense of the sacred, awe, and connection to something bigger, whether it's religious or not. He calls it the vertical dimension. He uses the flatland idea to contrast liking or disliking things with feeling a sense of the sublime or the profane.
It's about something beyond the everyday.
It is. He examines disgust as a moral emotion that defines boundaries and purity, with examples like practices in India. He also talks about sacred intrusions in secular settings, those moments that feel transcendent.
Moments that take us out of ourselves.
Yeah. And then there's elevation, that feeling we get when we see acts of kindness or courage. It's like the opposite of disgust. It makes us want to be better. It's even been linked to oxytocin.
It's inspiring.
It is. And awe, that feeling of vastness we get from nature or the universe, can also lead to transcendence. Haidt mentions Maslow's peak experiences, those moments of intense joy, and Leary's idea of the satanic self, suggesting our ego can block spiritual connection. He contrasts different views on the self, from transcending the ego to focusing on individual flourishing in a material world.
It's a complex topic.
It is. And it all leads to the final chapter, Happiness Comes From Between. Haidt says lasting happiness and meaning come from the connections between our inner selves, relationships, and the world. He touches on the meaning of life, separating external purpose from our internal sense of meaning.
Deep stuff.
It is. He brings back Csikszentmihalyi's flow, being absorbed in an activity, and its link to happiness and purpose. Love and meaningful work are key for flourishing.
Yeah, they give us a sense of purpose.
Right. He talks about occupational self-direction, having control over our work, and seeing work as a calling for job satisfaction. And vital engagement, deepening commitment to activities and values over time, leads to creativity and fulfillment. Haidt suggests meaning comes from coherence across our physical feelings, thoughts, and cultural context, using Hinduism as an example. He briefly looks at evolutionary reasons for religion, like kin altruism, reciprocal altruism, and group selection, explaining cooperation and altruism. And mystical experiences might be the self switching off, giving us a sense of connection to something vast. The chapter ends by suggesting a good life involves balance, drawing wisdom from many sources, trading our elephant, understanding our potential and limits, and living wisely.
So after this deep dive into the happiness hypothesis, it's clear that our minds are complex and emotions drive us more than we realize. Lasting happiness is less about achievements and more about our inner state, purposeful activities, and strong relationships. Adversity can actually help us grow, and cultivating virtue and connecting to something bigger can give us meaning.
In thinking about the interplay between the rider and the elephant, and how making progress towards goals brings more satisfaction than reaching them, what small step can you take today toward a goal that truly matters to you?
This deep dive has only scratched the surface of the happiness hypothesis. We encourage you to read the whole book, explore the thinkers Haidt mentions, and see how these ideas apply to your own life. What resonated with you? What questions or thoughts did this spark for you?